Admiral Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the stars. The year was 2387, and humans had spread across many worlds in space. They built homes on planets far from Earth and lived quiet lives. Most humans worked as farmers, or teachers, or doctors. They did not like to fight anymore. Jake commanded 12 ships in the Colonial Defense Fleet. His flagship was called the Cos Resolute. The other ships were smaller and older. They patrolled the space routes between human worlds and helped people when ships broke down or when storms hit planets. The fleet was not meant for big battles. Most aliens in the galaxy thought humans were weak because they did not have many warships. On a planet called New Montana, a woman named Lisa Carter ran the colony. She was in charge of 30,000 people who lived there. The colonists had worked for many years to turn the empty planet into farmland. They grew food and raised animals. Children played in green fields under a yellow sun. The people were happy and peaceful. Lisa often walked through the small towns on New Montana. She knew many of the families by name. There was old Pete Williams, who ran the hardware store. There was Mary Johnson, who taught at the school. There was young Tony Martinez, who fixed farming machines. These people had never hurt anyone. They just wanted to live and work and raise their children. Other human colonies were just like New Montana. On New Geneva, scientists studied plants and animals. On Haven Point, people built cities with tall buildings and parks. On Riverside, families fished in clean rivers and grew crops. All of these worlds were far from Earth, but they felt like home to the people who lived there. The humans had not fought a real war in 300 years. Their ancestors had been warriors who fought terrible battles. But the new humans were different. They believed in talking instead of fighting. When aliens caused trouble, humans would sit down and find ways to solve problems with words instead of weapons. This made many alien races think humans were soft and easy to defeat. One race that thought this way was called the Vex. The Vex looked like giant lizards that walked on two legs. They had sharp teeth and claws. They conquered other planets by force and made slaves of the people they defeated. The Vex were led by a warrior called War Prime Zafik. He was bigger and meaner than the other Vex. He had conquered 17 different alien civilizations. When he looked at the star maps, he saw that humans controlled good planets with valuable resources. He wanted those planets for the Vex. Zafik sent messages to the human government on Earth. He demanded that humans pay tribute to the Vex. He wanted them to give up half of their planets and send ships full of food and metal to Vex worlds every year. If humans refused, Zafik promised to attack them. The human diplomats read Zafik's demands and felt sick. They could not give up their colonies. Millions of people lived on those worlds. Families had homes there. Children had been born there. The diplomats sent a message back to Zafik, saying that humans wanted peace, but would not abandon their people. Zafik laughed when he read the human response. He called his war council together. The other Vex leaders gathered around a big table. In the dark war room of their command ship, maps of human space glowed on the walls. "The humans think they can refuse us," Zafik said to his officers. "They are weak. Their ships are few. Their worlds have no strong defenses. We will show them what happens to those who say no to the Vex." The Vex War Council agreed. They looked at reports from their spies about human colonies. The reports said that places like New Montana and Haven Point had only small police forces. There were no big guns or shields protecting the cities. Most human ships were cargo haulers or passenger transports. "We will make an example," Zafik decided. "We will destroy 3 of their colonies completely. When the other humans see what we did, they will surrender everything to save their remaining worlds." The Vex began preparing their 3rd fleet for attack. 47 warships gathered in space near the border of human territory. These ships carried weapons that could crack planets and turn cities to ash. The Vex soldiers on the ships sharpened their claws and cleaned their weapons. They were excited about the coming battle. Admiral Jake Harrison received reports about Vex ship movements, but he was not too worried. Aliens often moved their fleets around to look tough. Usually nothing happened. The humans had signed peace treaties with most of their neighbors. Even hostile races like the Vex had never actually attacked human civilians before. Jake was wrong to feel safe. Far away on the Vex command ship, War Prime Zathik gave his final orders to the fleet commanders. The attack would begin in 3 days. 3 human colonies would die to send a message to the galaxy. Lisa Carter went to sleep that night on New Montana, not knowing that Vex ships were already moving through space toward her world. The 30,000 colonists under her care slept peacefully in their beds. Children dreamed about playing games tomorrow. Parents made plans for the weekend. Teachers prepared lessons for their students. None of them knew that the dragons sleeping deep in human space were about to be awakened by the terrible mistake the Vex were about to make. The attack came at dawn on New Montana. Lisa Carter was drinking coffee in her office when the sky turned bright white. She looked out the window and saw strange ships hanging in the air above the colony. The ships were dark and covered with spikes. They did not look like any human vessels she had ever seen. Alarms began ringing all across the colony. People ran out of their houses and pointed at the sky. Children started crying. The alien ships were huge and frightening. Lisa grabbed her radio and tried to call for help, but the ships above were jamming all signals. War Prime Zathik stood on the bridge of his command ship and looked down at the human colony below. He could see the tiny figures of people running around like insects. Some humans were trying to get into vehicles to escape. Others were gathering their families together. "Begin the bombardment," Zathik ordered his weapons officer. The first plasma beam struck the center of the main town. The school where Mary Johnson taught her students vanished in a ball of fire. The hardware store where Pete Williams worked was turned to ash in seconds. Families who had been eating breakfast were vaporized before they could even scream. Lisa Carter watched in horror as her colony was destroyed. The farming equipment repair shop where Tony Martinez worked disappeared in a flash of green light. The medical center where Dr. Susan Walsh treated sick children was blown apart. Houses where families had lived for generations were reduced to smoking craters. She tried to use her emergency radio one more time. The signal was weak, but it got through for a few seconds before the communication tower was hit by another plasma beam. "This is Administrator Carter on New Montana," she said into the radio. "We are under attack by unknown forces. Our people are dying. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them we tried to run. Tell them we never hurt anyone." Those were the last words anyone heard from New Montana. The Vex ships continued firing for 2 more hours until nothing was left alive on the planet's surface. 30,000 people were dead. Men, women, children, babies, all gone. The green fields were now black glass. The rivers boiled away. Even the animals in the forests were killed. At the same time, other Vex fleets attacked Haven Point and Riverside. The people on those worlds had no warning and no way to defend themselves. The orbital stations above Haven Point were smashed by Vex warships. Burning metal fell from the sky like deadly rain. On Riverside, families fishing by the clean rivers were caught in the open when the bombardment began. The attacks were over. In less than 6 hours, 3 human colonies had been wiped out completely. 93,000 innocent people were dead. The Vex had not even tried to capture the worlds or take prisoners. They had simply murdered everyone. War Prime Zathik broadcast a message to all human worlds and to the Galactic Council. His ugly face appeared on screens across known space. His yellow eyes glowed with satisfaction as he spoke. "Humans are weak," Zathik announced. "We have claimed 3 of their worlds and killed all who lived there. This is what happens to those who refuse the Vex. Submit tribute to us now, or more of your colonies will burn. We give you 1 month to surrender." Admiral Jake Harrison was on patrol near the edge of human space when he received the news. His communications officer, Amy Brooks, was a young woman who had joined the Colonial Defense Fleet to see the galaxy and help people. She had never seen real war before. Amy's hands shook as she read the reports coming in from the destroyed colonies. Her face went white, and tears began running down her cheeks. "Sir," she whispered to Admiral Harrison, "New Montana is gone. There are no survivors. The sensors show the entire surface has been sterilized." Jake Harrison felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. He had visited New Montana many times. He knew Lisa Carter personally. She had shown him around the colony and introduced him to the families who lived there. Those people had trusted him to keep them safe. What about Haven Point and Riverside? Harrison asked, though he already feared the answer. "The same, sir," Amy replied. "No responses to our calls. The Vex broadcast shows images of the bombardment. They ... They killed everyone." The bridge of the Resolute fell silent. The other officers stared at their screens in shock. These were not military targets that had been destroyed. These were homes, schools, hospitals. The Vex had committed mass murder against defenseless civilians. Harrison ordered his small fleet to begin rescue operations. They raced to the nearby colonies to evacuate people before the Vex could attack again. His 12 ships could not fight 47 Vex warships, but they could save lives. On Earth, President Ryan Cooper received the terrible news in an emergency meeting with his cabinet. The president was a calm man who usually solved problems by talking to people. He had been elected because he promised to keep the peace that humans had enjoyed for 3 centuries. But as Cooper watched the Vex broadcast showing the destruction of the colonies, something changed in his eyes. His advisors saw a hardness they had never seen before. The president stood up slowly and walked to the window of his office. He looked out at the peaceful city below. "How many?" he asked quietly. 93,000 confirmed dead, his defense secretary replied. "Men, women, and children. The Vex targeted civilian areas specifically." Cooper was quiet for a long time. His ancestors had fought in terrible wars, but he had hoped those days were over forever. He had believed that humans could be better than their violent past. A Vex had just proven him wrong. "Activate the emergency protocols," Cooper said finally. "Contact Director Morrison at the Strategic Defense Complex. Tell her to wake up the production lines." His advisors looked at each other nervously. The emergency protocols had not been used in 300 years. The Strategic Defense Complex had been built during humanity's last Great War and then shut down when peace came. "Sir," the Defense Secretary said carefully, "those facilities have been mothballed for centuries. Are you sure we want to—" "They murdered our children," Cooper interrupted. His voice was cold and hard. "They targeted schools and hospitals. They broadcast it to humiliate us. Yes, I'm sure." Across human space, the news of the attacks spread like wildfire. On every human world, people gathered around screens to watch the reports. They saw the burned ruins of New Montana. They heard Lisa Carter's final message. They watched Vex ships destroying orbital stations above Haven Point. The reaction was swift and terrible. Peaceful farmers picked up old hunting rifles. Teachers began learning how to use weapons. Doctors studied military medicine. The anger spread from world to world like a plague. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, automated systems that had slept for 3 centuries began to wake up. Director Kate Morrison had never expected to use her security codes. She was the great-granddaughter of the engineers who built the strategic defense manufacturing complex 300 years ago. The facility had been sealed and forgotten after the last Great War ended. Kate had inherited her position from her family, but she never thought she would actually need to open the mountain. The massive blast doors had not moved in centuries. Ancient machines groaned and creaked as they slowly opened to reveal tunnels that stretched deep underground. Emergency lights flickered on one by one, showing corridors that had been dark for longer than most people had been alive. Kate walked through the tunnels with a team of engineers. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. The air smelled old and metallic. They passed huge chambers filled with sleeping robots and production lines that had been built to create weapons of war. The main computer core is still functional, one of the engineers reported. The nuclear reactors are in standby mode. We can bring everything online within 48 hours. Kate nodded and continued deeper into the mountain. She carried old blueprints and technical manuals that her family had kept safe for generations. The papers showed designs for warships and weapons that had never been built because peace had come first. President Cooper's voice echoed through the facility's ancient speakers. He was addressing the nation from his office in Washington. Fellow citizens, the president said, 3 days ago, the Vex attacked our colonies without warning. They murdered 93,000 innocent people, including children and elderly. They did this not to defend themselves or protect their people, but to frighten us into submission. Kate stopped walking and listened to the president's words. Around her, the old facility continued to wake up. Lights came on in rooms that had been dark for centuries. Computers began running diagnostic checks on weapon systems. The Vex believe we are weak because we choose peace over war, Cooper continued. They think our kindness is weakness. They are about to learn how wrong they are. I am authorizing the activation of military production facilities that have been sealed since our last great conflict. We tried to be better than our ancestors. We tried to put away the tools of war. But when innocents are murdered, when children are targeted, we have no choice but to remember who we really are. The president paused, and his voice became harder. The dragons are waking up. Across human space, similar facilities began opening. On Mars, underground shipyards that had been sealed for 3 centuries started their engines. On Europa, weapons research stations came online. On dozens of colony worlds, old bunkers and hidden factories began producing tools of war. But the real awakening was happening in the hearts of ordinary humans. On the farming world of Kepler Station, a man named Bill Roberts had lost his brother in the New Montana attack. His brother had been a teacher on that peaceful world. Bill had been a farmer all his life, but now he walked into the colonial recruitment office. I want to join the military, Bill told the recruiter. The recruiter was a middle-aged woman named Carol Stevens. She had been processing applications for supply duties and transport jobs. She had not expected combat volunteers. Sir, are you sure? Carol asked. Military service during wartime is dangerous. My brother taught kindergarten kids on New Montana, Bill replied. The Vex burned his school with the children still inside. I'm sure. The same scene was happening on every human world. Peaceful people who had never held weapons were volunteering to fight. These were not professional soldiers looking for glory. They were farmers and teachers and doctors and engineers who had lost family members to Vex brutality. Meanwhile, Admiral Jake Harrison was desperately trying to evacuate the remaining colonies with his small fleet. His 12 ships raced from world to world, picking up civilians before the Vex could strike again. The alien fleet was still out there, moving slowly through human space and destroying everything they found. Captain Ben Foster commanded one of Harrison's escort ships, called the Defiant. It was a small vessel designed to patrol trade routes, not carry refugees. But when the Vex attacked the colony on Riverside, Foster managed to rescue 8,000 people. The Defiant was packed beyond capacity. Families slept in the cargo holds. Children sat in the corridors. Foster had to shut down non-essential systems to provide life support for so many people. His ship limped through space toward the safety of the inner worlds. They're not even trying to capture anything, Foster reported to Admiral Harrison over the radio. They're just killing everyone they can find. Men, women, children. They don't care. This isn't conquest, it's extermination. Harrison received the report on his bridge. His communications officer, Amy Brooks, was monitoring Vex transmissions. The aliens were broadcasting their attacks to intimidate other races and show their power. "Sir," Amy said, "the Vex are heading toward the Henderson colony next. 25,000 people live there. We can't evacuate them all in time." Harrison stared at the tactical display. His small fleet could not fight the Vex armada. But he could not abandon the people of Henderson either. He was about to order his ships forward when new signals appeared on the sensors. "Sir," Amy called out with excitement, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from Earth space. Something big is coming through the hyperspace gates." The first new ships to arrive were not much bigger than Harrison's existing fleet. But they were different. These vessels were sleek and dark, with advanced sensor arrays and weapon systems that Harrison had never seen before. Their hulls were made from materials that seemed to absorb light. The lead ship contacted the Resolute directly. "Admiral Harrison, this is Captain Sam Mitchell of the stealth destroyer Shadow. We are here to begin preliminary operations. Please maintain evacuation duties while we handle the Vex problem." Harrison had never heard of Captain Mitchell or the Shadow. The ship did not appear in any fleet registry he knew about. But it was clearly human, and it was clearly built for war. "Captain Mitchell," Harrison replied, "I was not informed of any stealth destroyers in the fleet." "That's because we didn't exist until 3 days ago," Mitchell answered. "A lot of things are about to exist that didn't before. The dragons are awake now, Admiral, and they're very angry about what happened to those colonies." The Shadow and her sister ships moved toward Vex space at incredible speed. They seemed to flicker in, out of sensor range, becoming visible only when they chose to be seen. Harrison watched them disappear into the darkness between the stars. Back on Earth, Director Morrison stood in the main production hall of the Strategic Defense Complex. The chamber was the size of 10 football fields and filled with robot assembly. Lines, sparks flew as machines that had been sleeping for centuries began building new types of warships. "How long until the first wave is ready?" President Cooper asked during his daily briefing. 6 months for conventional vessels," Morrison replied. "But the stealth ships are already deploying. We had a few prototypes in storage that we've been upgrading with modern technology." "And the heavy fleet?" Morrison smiled grimly. 18 months. But when they're ready, no one in the galaxy will question human resolve again." The president nodded. "Build them all. And Director, don't hold back on the specifications. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right." Across human space, the awakening continued. The dragons stirred in their mountain lairs, and in the darkness between stars, Vex ships began disappearing one by one. 18 months had passed since the Vex destroyed the human colonies. War Prime Zathik sat in his command chair, feeling very pleased with himself. The Vex now controlled 7 human worlds and had enslaved the few survivors they found hiding. In ruins, the galaxy had watched humans lose their colonies and do nothing to stop it. Zathik had been promoted to Supreme War Prime for his successful campaign. Other alien races now paid tribute to the Vex out of fear. The Galactic Council had not even condemned the attacks on the human colonies. Everyone believed that humans were finished as a power in space. But strange things had been happening lately. Vex supply ships were disappearing between their conquered worlds. Patrol vessels went out on routine missions and never came back. Search teams found wreckage floating in space, but no clues about what had destroyed the ships. "Report," Zathik ordered his intelligence officer during the morning briefing. "We have lost another 3 cargo vessels in the Henderson system." The officer replied nervously. "That makes 27 ships lost in the past month. Our patrols found debris, but no survivors." Zathik's yellow eyes narrowed. "Pirates?" "Unknown, Supreme War Prime. The attacks leave no trace. Our ships simply vanish from sensors and are found destroyed hours later." Zathik was not worried about a few missing cargo ships. The Vex fleet was still powerful, and humans had shown no sign of fighting back. Intelligence reports suggested that Earth was still sending diplomatic messages, asking for peace talks. The humans remained weak and pathetic. What Zathik did not know was that Captain Sam Mitchell's stealth destroyer Shadow was hunting his supply lines like a ghost. Mitchell had been a cargo pilot before the war, but now she commanded the most advanced warship in human space. Her vessel could become invisible to all sensors and strike without warning. "Target acquired," Mitchell's weapons officer reported. "Vex heavy transport, minimal escort. Lock weapons and fire," Mitchell ordered. The Shadow materialized behind the Vex convoy like a nightmare emerging from darkness. Her advanced plasma cannons fired once, and the alien transport exploded in brilliant fire. The escort ships tried to turn and fight, but they could not target what they could not see. Within minutes, all the Vex vessels were drifting debris. "Another one down," Mitchell reported to Admiral Harrison over encrypted channels. "Their supply lines are getting weaker every day." Harrison was commanding a much larger fleet now. The first wave of new warships had arrived from Earth, and they were unlike anything the Colonial Defense Fleet had operated before. 200 vessels equipped with shields, weapons, and engines far beyond what the Vex possessed. "Good work, Captain," Harrison replied. "Are you ready for the main assault?" "More than ready, sir. Time to take back Haven Point." The liberation of Haven Point began at dawn. Harrison's fleet dropped out of hyperspace directly above the conquered world. The Vex garrison had been expecting possible human attacks, but they were not prepared for what they faced. The human ships moved like dancers in a deadly ballet. Their hulls were covered with armor that seemed to bend light around it. Their weapons fired beams of energy that cut through Vex shields like they were made of paper. Most importantly, they fought with a cold precision that terrified the alien defenders. The Vex commander on Haven Point sent a desperate message to his fleet. "Human vessels are attacking. They have superior technology. Request immediate reinforcement." But the reinforcements never came. Every Vex ship that tried to reach Haven Point was intercepted by human stealth vessels and destroyed before it could help. Captain Mitchell and her fellow ghost captains had cut off all routes to the besieged world. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, every Vex ship in the system had been destroyed or captured. Harrison's fleet had not lost a single vessel. The few Vex ground troops on Haven Point surrendered when they realized no help was coming. Admiral Harrison walked through the ruins of Haven Point's main city. The beautiful buildings he remembered from before the war were now broken and burned. The Vex had used human survivors as slave labor to strip the planet of resources. Harrison found mass graves where the aliens had buried people who could not work. "Sir," his aide reported, "we found about 3,000 human survivors hidden in the underground tunnels. They've been living like animals for over a year." Harrison met with some of the survivors in a makeshift medical station. They were thin and scared, but alive. An elderly man named George Parker had organized the underground resistance that kept people hidden from Vex patrols. "We never stopped believing you would come back," George told Harrison. "Even when the Vex told us Earth had surrendered, we knew humans don't abandon their own." "I'm sorry it took so long," Harrison replied. "But we're here now, and we're not leaving again." News of the Haven Point liberation spread across the galaxy faster than light. The Vex had lost an entire garrison without inflicting any casualties. On the human fleet, other alien races began to wonder if they had underestimated humanity's military capabilities. War Prime. Zafik received the news in his command center. For the first time since the war began, he felt a cold touch of fear in his heart. The humans had hidden their true strength, and now they were revealing it piece by piece. "How is this possible?" Zafik demanded of his advisors. "Our intelligence said humans had only 12 old ships." "The reports were accurate at the time," his intelligence chief replied. "But it appears humans have been building new vessels in secret. These ships use technology we do not understand." Zafik studied the tactical reports from Haven Point. Human weapons were decades ahead of anything the Vex possessed. Their ships could appear and disappear at will. Their tactics were brutal and efficient, showing no mercy to enemies who had shown none to human civilians. "Summon all available fleets," Zafik ordered. "We will crush these humans before they can liberate more worlds." But even as he gave the order, Zafik knew something fundamental had changed. The humans were no longer the weak prey he had attacked 18 months ago. They had become something else entirely. Far from the battlefield, President Cooper received Admiral Harrison's report in his war room deep beneath Washington. The walls were covered with star maps showing human and Vex positions. Red lights marked conquered colonies, while blue lights showed liberated worlds. "Haven Point is secure," Cooper announced to his cabinet. "Casualties were minimal, and we've rescued 3,000 survivors." Defense Secretary Linda Brown looked up from her reports. "Sir, our intelligence suggests the Vex are mobilizing their entire fleet. Over 2,000 ships are heading toward the core human worlds." Cooper nodded calmly. "Then it's time for the heavy fleet to make its debut. Contact Admiral Davis and tell her she's cleared for departure." In the shipyards orbiting Mars, 5,000 warships prepared for their first mission. Each vessel was larger than anything in the Vex Armada. They carried weapons that could crack moons and shields that could withstand the fire of entire enemy fleets. Admiral Linda Davis stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Retribution. She had been a teacher before the war, but when the Vex murdered her students on New Montana, she had volunteered for military service. Now she commanded the largest human fleet in history. "All ships report ready for hyperspace jump," her navigation officer announced. Davis looked out at her massive fleet. These ships represented 18 months of human industrial might focused on a single purpose. They were the dragons fully awakened, ready to show the galaxy what happened when humanity abandoned restraint. "Take us to the Vex home system," Davis ordered. "It's time to end this war." The Vex home system had never seen so many warships in one place. Admiral Linda Davis looked out from the bridge of the Retribution at 5,000 human vessels arranged in perfect formation around her flagship. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built with 3 centuries of accumulated knowledge and 18 months of focused rage. War Prime. Zafik had gathered every available Vex warship to defend his homeworld. Over 2,000 vessels formed defensive lines around the planet. Orbital weapons platforms bristled with guns. Fighter squadrons patrolled the outer system. It was the largest fleet the Vex had ever assembled. But as Zafik stared at the human Armada through his viewscreen, he felt something he had never experienced before in his long career of conquest. True fear. The human ships were massive beyond anything he had imagined possible. They moved with perfect coordination, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the light from the system's star. Open a channel to the Vex command ship, Admiral Davis ordered her communications officer. The bridge of the Retribution fell silent as the connection was established. Davis had once been an elementary school teacher on New Montana. She had taught children how to read and write and dream about the future. The Vex had murdered those children along with their families. "This is Admiral Davis of the human Terran Navy," she announced, her voice carrying across space to every ship in the system. "You attacked our civilians. You murdered our children. You declared war on a species that wanted only peace. You have awakened something that should have stayed sleeping." Zafik activated his own communications. "Humans, you have made a grave mistake coming here. This is the Vex home system. We have over 2,000 warships. Surrender now, and we may allow some of you to live as slaves." Davis almost smiled at the alien's arrogance. "War Prime Zafik, you seem to misunderstand the situation. We are not here to conquer your worlds or enslave your people. We are here to teach the galaxy a lesson about the price of genocide." The first day of the Battle of the Vex homeworld was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Human ships moved through space like hunting wolves, coordinating their attacks with inhuman precision. The Vex fought desperately, but their weapons barely scratched the armor of the human vessels. Captain Ben Foster, now commanding the heavy cruiser Vengeance, led a squadron against the Vex orbital defenses. His ship had been named after the colony of Riverside, where he had rescued civilians during the evacuation. Every human vessel carried similar names, memorials to the worlds and people the Vex had destroyed. "Target the weapons platforms," Foster ordered his crew. "Show them what we learned from studying their attack patterns." The Vengeance fired her main guns, and an entire orbital fortress simply ceased to exist. The beam weapons cut through the Vex structure like it was made of tissue paper. Around Foster's ship, other human vessels systematically dismantled the defenses that had taken the Vex centuries to build. By the end of the first day, the Vex had lost half their fleet and all their orbital installations. Human casualties were so light they barely registered on the battle reports. The technological gap between the two forces was so vast that calling it a battle was almost generous. On the second day, Admiral Davis established complete orbital supremacy. Vex ships tried to flee the system, but human stealth vessels intercepted them at the hyperspace jump points. Captain Sam Mitchell's Shadow and her sister ships hunted down every escaping vessel like a pack of invisible predators. War Prime Zafik watched his fleet die from the bridge of his command ship. The vessel was one of the last Vex ships still fighting. Around him, his officers prepared for death with the grim dignity of warriors who knew they were beaten. "Supreme War Prime," his communications officer reported, "the humans are sending another transmission." Zavik expected demands for surrender or threats of bombardment. Instead, President Cooper's face appeared on his screen. The human leader looked older than he had 18 months ago, aged by the weight of decisions no peaceful man should have to make. "War Prime Zafik," Cooper said calmly, "this is President Cooper of Earth. You are about to witness something that has not happened in 300 years. You are about to see what humans are capable of when we stop holding back." Cooper paused and gestured to someone off-screen. "Evacuation transports are entering your system now. You have 72 hours to evacuate your homeworld. Every civilian who wishes to leave will be transported to safety. After that time limit expires, anyone remaining on the planet will share the fate you gave to New Montana." Zafik could not believe what he was hearing. "You expect us to abandon our homeworld? This is madness. No conqueror in galactic history has ever ... "We are not conquerors," Cooper interrupted. "We are teachers, and the lesson we are about to deliver will be remembered for 1,000 years." True to their word, Massive human transport ships arrived in the system within hours. These were not warships, but civilian vessels hastily converted to carry refugees. They approached the Vex homeworld under flags of truce, their holds empty and waiting. The evacuation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships, the same species whose colonies had been destroyed without warning, offered safe passage to their enemies' civilians. Medical teams treated injured Vex refugees. Human engineers worked alongside alien technicians to organize the massive population transfer. Over 3 billion Vex civilians accepted the evacuation. They left their homeworld carrying only what they could fit in personal bags. Children who had been taught that humans were weak prey found themselves being given food and medical care by human doctors and nurses, but not everyone left. Zathik and about 10 million Vex refused to abandon their planet. Most were military personnel and government officials who preferred death to exile. They watched from their world's surface as the human evacuation ships departed right on schedule. 72 hours have passed. Admiral Davis announced over the system-wide communication channel. All non-combatants have been evacuated. What happens next is on your own heads. The weapon that destroyed the Vex homeworld was not in any military textbook. Human scientists had spent 18 months creating something new, something specifically designed to send a message rather than simply kill. It was a device that destabilized a planet's core, ensuring that the world would die slowly over several months. Zathik watched from his command bunker as the surface of his homeworld began to crack and burn. The weapon worked gradually, giving everyone trapped on the planet time to understand what was happening. The proud Vex civilization was ending not in glorious battle, but in the slow realization of their own mortality. Why? Zathik transmitted to the human fleet as his world died around him. Why destroy an entire planet? Admiral Davis responded personally. Because 93,000 human civilians died in flames when you attacked our colonies. Because you targeted schools and hospitals. Because you murdered children to intimidate their parents. This is what justice looks like when dragons wake up. The war ended within a year. 17 civilizations that had been conquered by the Vex were liberated by human task forces. The Galactic Council, which had remained silent during the genocide of human colonists, now scrambled to establish diplomatic relations with Earth's new military government. But the dragons, once awakened, did not easily return to sleep. The human Terran Navy maintained its massive fleet, patrolling space with the quiet efficiency of apex predators. Human colonies were rebuilt, but now they were defended by orbital fortresses and rapid response fleets. Admiral Jake Harrison, now elderly and bearing the scars of 2 years of warfare, served as humanity's representative to the Galactic Council. The alien delegates who had once dismissed humans as weak now listened carefully to every word he spoke. During a council session on trade regulations, a representative from the Centauri Federation made a casual comment about human overreaction to the Vex attacks. The chamber fell silent as Harrison slowly stood up from his chair. Overreaction? Harrison asked quietly. We spent 3 centuries building a peaceful civilization. We chose diplomacy over warfare, gardens over battlefields, schools over barracks. We wanted to be better than our ancestors. The alien representative shifted nervously in his seat. Around the chamber, other delegates watched Harrison with fearful respect. And for trying to be better, Harrison continued, we were rewarded with genocide. 93,000 of our people died because someone decided our kindness was weakness. Our children were murdered to send a message. Harrison walked slowly around the council chamber, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The dragons are awake now. They patrol our borders and guard our worlds. They remember every human child who died in Vex bombardments. And they are always watching for the next species that mistakes human mercy for human weakness. He stopped in front of the Centauri representative's desk. So before you call our response an overreaction, remember this. We gave the Vex civilians 72 hours to evacuate. We offered medical care to our enemies' refugees. We showed more mercy to them than they showed to our kindergarten students. Harrison returned to his seat, and the chamber remained silent for long minutes. Finally, the council moved on to other business, but the lesson had been delivered. The galaxy now understood that humanity's greatest strength, H,